concerned about the stock market activity we're seeing around GameStop, and now with some other stocks as well, including the subsidiary or whatever, the company that was Blockbuster. And have there been any conversations with the SEC about how to pursue it?
Well, I'm also happy to repeat that we have the first female Treasury Secretary and a team that's surrounding her, and often questions about market we'll send to them.
We currently have a $20 trillion debt. And you might ask yourself, whose fault is it? Republicans or Democrats? The easy answer is both. Both parties are equally responsible, equally culpable, and equally guilty of ignoring the debt, ignoring the spending problem, and really, I think, allowing our country to rot from the inside out. This year, the debt will be $700 billion. The deficit will be $700 billion for just 1 year for our country. $700 billion. We borrow about $1 million a minute.
Welcome to the Hedgehog Watchdog. I'm Devin Saxon, joined always with Greg Baldwin. We're the meme team behind Libertarian Party of South Dakota and South Dakotans Against Prohibition. Today's episode is brought to you by Pinkcoin. You can check them out at pinkcoin.com. Our guest today is treasurer of the Libertarian Party of South Dakota, also is the District 4 Senate candidate in 2020. He's also the owner of Camp Ridger Seasonings. You can check them out at campridger.net. Daryl Root, thanks for joining us today. Daryl, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So the topic today is the national debt. On that intro clip, Rand Paul was mentioning that that clip was 3 years old, and Rand Paul was mentioning that the debt back then was, or the deficit was $700 billion. This last year, the deficit was $7 trillion. So in 3 years, the deficit has gone up times 10. Do you see any end in sight, Daryl, or is this going to just continue into an economic collapse?
Well, unfortunately, if we keep voting Republicans and Democrats into office and people and the public in general keeps thinking they can make a living off of the government, it's not going to end unless it ends in collapse. And then we'll have to start from scratch, more or less.
Yeah. So what would happen if the United States did default, do you think?
Lost you there briefly. I think you asked if it would default or something.
Yeah, like what would happen if the United States defaulted on its debt of $27 trillion right now?
Oh, unfortunately, nobody really knows because the United States never defaulted. Other countries have. Greece has had defaults, Argentina, Brazil. And what they do is they usually end up getting money from the IMF, the International Monetary Fund.
Mm-hmm.
But there we're talking tens or maybe a couple $100 billion at the most. And what happens with them is they totally have to restructure how they do government business. Problem is America's in debt for $27 trillion and the IMF only has $1 trillion of assets, and a sixth of those are owned by us. So where do we go?
Well, I've always had a conspiracy, not even really a conspiracy theory, but a theory that the reason we spend so much on our military is kind of that whole reason. I mean, who do we owe and who's going to come take it? And as long as we're the world power and as long as our military is the number one in the world, what are you going to do?
But on the other hand, what's going to happen to our power? What's going to happen to our military might if we do default? We can't pay our debts. I'm sure military is probably going to be first in line, and the average consumer is going to be screwed over. But what if China just decides to quit loaning us money, or all the other people that decide to buy our debt? What happens if they just decide not anymore? We're not doing it anymore.
We just print more money. That's what they've been doing. Like, what do you mean, Daryl? You just break off the printing press and you get to work.
Yeah, then you got too much money chasing everything, and then you got inflation. Ask Venezuela.
Well, we've gained what? What is it? Like you said, almost 10 trillion in debt in like 4 years.
No, 7 trillion just this year more.
If you don't count COVID spending.
No, you got to count. You got to count.
Well, it's not officially in the books yet, but pre-COVID anyway, the debt was going to be 1 trillion. Right there is your IMF money. Last year it was 1 trillion.
Yeah, but the problem is they keep using COVID as an excuse to pass every single spending bill that they want.
You're going to see it be 35 trillion very quickly. It's just an excuse. I mean, South Dakota has proved you can operate an economy and without shutting it down and have no worse COVID results than anybody else. I mean, our stats are basically the same as any other state, but we kept our economy open. I mean, our unemployment rate is less than what it was pre-COVID.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the positive things I'm seeing on this U.S. debt clock is that the average debt owed per citizen just from state government debt is $3,709. And, South Dakota's got a balanced budget amendment in our constitution. So we have a per citizen debt of 0. Hell yeah.
That's the way it should be. The national government should have a balanced budget amendment too.
Yeah, how the hell did that end up happening? Like at that very first constitutional convention with George Washington and James Madison. How the hell did they not include a balanced budget amendment in the Constitution?
I'm assuming 250 years ago, most people had common sense not to spend more than what they made, and they didn't feel there was a reason for an amendment. I mean, the first few years of our country, they really didn't spend more, but I don't know. You look back at our history, I think we've had, 5 or 6 balanced budgets in the entire history of the U.S. It should have been a part of. It should have been a part of the Constitution. You can't spend more than what you take in. That would force either less spending or more taxes, and we all know what most people think of more taxes.
Yeah.
And everybody should pay at least a little bit. I mean, I'm all for helping out poor people, but at least make the poor people pay $1, $2, $3. Make them pay something so they actually have to write a check. No, we don't do that. We let them have 0 tax and then give them all sorts of credits beyond that.
So since you're the treasurer of the Libertarian Party in South Dakota, and since we were just talking about government taking out loans, I always thought this was a little bit odd, but included in our bylaws, it talks about taking out a loan and how to do that. And I just always thought that was odd. Like, we're the party of fiscal responsibility. Why would we even be taking out a loan,
We haven't had any reason to yet. Hopefully we never will. And it does require approval of the executive committee to do so. We
don't want to be the Democrats.
No, we don't want to be the Democrats. I guess we have it there for future in case there ever was an emergency. I mean,
we just got to hope nobody gets up there and uses their power.
Well, if we've got a certain budget and we're trying to get something done, sometimes you need to borrow money, even if it's only for a week or two. So it's there, I guess, for emergency uses.
Yeah, and for those not from South Dakota that are watching, the Democratic Party in South Dakota is actually in debt, I think like $45,000. and they had a big debacle, and the entire executive committee resigned and everything. It was pretty, it was pretty bad.
Yeah, we promise not to do that.
Yeah.
At least as long as I'm the treasurer, I won't. You won't see me voting yes.
Well, what else you got on the national debt? I mean, I can remember I'm about, getting close to 40 years old, and I kind of, what made me a libertarian or drew me to the Libertarian Party was the balanced budget and the this national debt I thought was out of control 10 years ago, and 10 years ago it's almost laughable
Well,
what it is now,
Well, I got a couple pages of notes here. A lot of it's numbers heavy, so I'll try not to bore us too much. I mean, we're talking trillions right now, so I kind of want to break that down and make it into numbers that are a little more understandable.
Yeah.
Okay. The accumulated debt per capita. That's for every man, woman, and child. If we take our national debt and divide it by the population, back in 1990, it was $12,800 per every man, woman, and child. If we adjust that for inflation, it would be $24,900 today. But what is it today? It's over $70,000 per person. Okay, which is crazy. And it gets even worse because most people over 65 don't work. And if they do, it's temporary work. Most people under 18 don't work. Again, if they do, it's part-time work. So you got the middle pack in there. And out of that, you have a workforce participation rate of about 62%. Mm-hmm. So what does all that mean? It means out of 330 million people, about 161 million have jobs, which is half the population. So you can actually double that debt. It actually works out to over 140,000 per worker. 4 states have median household value of less than that. So the average debt per worker is higher than what a house costs in 4 states.
Man, we all owe the government a house. You guys get.
That's what it boils down to. Yes. Buy a house and hand it over. It's essentially the same thing.
Let's not give Joe Biden any ideas.
And none of the presidents have done anything to control it. I mean, all these numbers are going to be adjusted for inflation. Mm-hmm. When Bush took over in 2000, that debt was 29.8 thou. When Obama took over, it was up to 40,000. When Trump took over, it was up to 65,000, and now here we are 4 years later, at 70,000 a person. And again, you can double those figures per worker.
Yeah. Well, that's why I always supported the Convention of States project, because they're trying to do a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution, because I have no faith that anybody in Congress is going to bring a bill that balances a balanced budget amendment.
Yeah, they'll never do it.
They're never going to do it. And like you were saying, how the debt just keeps increasing every time. It's because, nobody wants to actually make cuts. Nobody wants to do the hard thing, because everyone just wants to get reelected.
Exactly. And that's going to be part of my fix it, I hope, when we get to that part. And let's take a look. Just the interest on the debt in fiscal year 2019 was $479 billion. Before we came on the show, I was talking to Devin a little bit, and that's pretty much what the entire federal budget was during Reagan's first year. So we're paying as much interest on the debt as the entire budget was when Reagan took office. I mean, that's pathetic. Mm-hmm. And right now we're kind of lucky because interest rates are basically all but zero. But for every percentage point interest goes up, we would owe another $270 billion.
Wow. Yeah, I definitely feel like the states need to step in and do something. I know there's not a constitutional amendment that, or no, there's nothing in the Constitution that says they have to have a balanced budget, but it says they have to pay off the debt in the Constitution. So I think we're at a point now where it's almost impossible to pay off this debt. So like, I don't know if some kind of lawsuit can be filed. We can go to the Supreme Court. Like all 50 states are like, yo, like the Senate has, or the Congress has the ability to, you know, do our budgeting, but they're violating the Constitution because there's no freaking way their budgeting is going to involve paying this debt off that they're increasing by $7 trillion a year.
Well, you know what's going to happen, being an accountant and bookkeeper on the side, they're going to use tricky language and say, well, we're paying off the debt from 1970, but we're not going to count this year's debt. We're not paying off Monday. So we are paying our debt. Yeah,
that sounds like something they come up with.
Yeah, I mean, and another thing too is, out of all that debt, 30% of it is owned by foreign countries. You know, whether, and I don't know if that's a good thing either. You know,
what would these foreign countries do you think if we just were like, yeah, we're not going to pay you? Sorry, tough luck.
Well, for one, they'd quit doing business with us.
Yeah.
Doing business with us. Yeah, and we import so much from foreign countries. I mean, well, China, I mean, look at all the products out there in the market made in China. What happens if they simply decided they are...
Oh, we lost him.
Oh no, he's a freeze. Maybe he'll come back in a second here.
That's not going to happen anytime soon, because right now they need our money more than we need their debt. But, you know, it's crazy.
I feel like our government would just betray us and just give like Arizona and Nevada to China if they really needed to pay off some of their. I think what do they owe, like $3 trillion to China or something like that?
Well, you know what would be a good idea, since California would be the 8th biggest country in the world if it was by itself. Let's give them California, because right there would eliminate a large chunk. It's good we can laugh about it, I guess, but at least in some aspects.
They'd probably be all for it out there. Be like, yeah, we'll be communists finally. Woo!
Okay, so that was the debt, you know, and I kind of tried to put that into numbers we could understand with the debt per person. Now let's go to yearly expenditures per person. These will all be numbers that people can understand. Again, back in 1990, the expenditures of the federal government were $1.25 trillion, which worked out, adjusted for inflation, to $9,700. Now our debt just for the year is $14,400. So that keeps going up. And the only president that actually lowered it in that time was Clinton, because from 1990 to 2000, it actually went down a little bit.
Just like a smidgen.
Just a smidgen, yeah, from 9,700 a person to 9,500. But it went down. At least it wasn't going up at all. You know, and again, Bush became president, went from 9,500 to 12,100. Under Obama, it went up to 12,800. Under Trump, up to 14,400, and that's not counting COVID spending. You know, so no president wants to stop it. No political party, at least the two major political parties don't. We, the libertarians, do. You know,
who was the last president that was like vetoing unbalanced budget? Was that like Calvin Coolidge?
The last president, I believe, if I recall correctly, we actually had one under Clinton.
Yeah.
But prior to that, it's been a long time.
Well, he probably vetoed it because he didn't spend enough, right?
Well, it actually got passed.
Do you think if the president had the power to do line item vetoes, that it would kind of help a little bit, maybe? They would,
Missed a part of that question that you.
like how Clinton was doing like a line item veto, where he'd like veto like a section, like a pork, like the big pork interest, like they gave the like a special interest or something. But then they ruled that unconstitutional or something.
Yes, they did. Clinton wanted to do that. It was ruled unconstitutional.
Do you think if it was,
I don't get, because most states have that right.
Yeah, so like if that was, like an amended to the Constitution where the president could do that, I think that would help a little bit. I know.
I'm kind of worried about that too, because then we get into, is the president going to be more of a dictator? Same thing with executive orders. Executive orders are things that are done without congressional approval. In the Constitution, everything's supposed to be approved by Congress. Executive orders were for national emergencies like wartime, not, COVID spending, and if we allow a line item veto, it's kind of the same thing. It's like, well, I don't like this, I'm going to veto it. Or it might be giving him too much power. Yeah. So I do see the pros of it, but I also see the cons of it.
Yeah, well, there's other ways we can tackle this debt. I mean, I think we were mentioning before the show aired that if every American gave up 100% of their labor to the government for 2 years, and the government spent nothing for 2 years.
Yes, we did discuss that.
We'll have this paid off. So everybody's got to pull themselves up by their bootstraps to get this done.
We laugh at it, but just think of that realistically. If the government never spent another dollar, it would take every dollar of every American's labor for 2 years to pay off the national debt. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's insane.
Well, I look forward to the Republicans coming out of hiding to let us know that they care about the debt again. Because our own congressman 6 years ago, 8 years ago, was voting to shut down the government because they refused to raise the debt ceiling. And then, you got a Republican in office, and he outspent everybody in the entire history of the country.
Right. Well, if you look at our debt, that's basically what's happened with the last four presidents.
Well, yeah, everyone's
got to be four. Yeah. Bush ran the debt up higher than all the previous presidents combined. Obama did the same thing. Trump did the same thing. When's it going to stop? If Biden does the same thing, we're going to have a $50 trillion debt before his first year's over. His first term.
The problem, though, and I always want to give Republicans a lot more crap than I do Democrats, is because Democrats don't claim to be fiscal hawks, and so they don't care about the debt. But Republicans will always campaign. Donald Trump campaigned. That he was going to get rid of the debt.
He was going to pay that off in 8 years, and he didn't even start.
Yeah, he didn't even start, and so there's no reason to believe that a second term was gonna. Because actually, on his way out of office, he was wanting to give us even more stimulus money. So.
Well, yeah, the Democrats were asking for 2,000, the Republicans were only asking for 600, but Trump said, "Oh, let's give them 2,000." It's.
Is Biden more fiscally conservative because he actually has not issued that second check?
He wants to give us that extra 1,400, so it totals 2,000.
Yeah, somebody pointed that out today. They were like, "We went through the whole month without a new stimulus plan."
I could see these stimulus checks. It's basically been government lockdowns that have caused the problem. So I could see some of these stimulus checks if they were a part of unemployment. Instead of saying you get unemployment plus $600 a week extra for being alive, or 400 extra, whatever it is, eliminate that, and just say unemployment plus a stimulus check for people who are unemployed. Because employed people who are still working a job like myself, I don't need the stimulus check. Mine is still sitting in my savings account where the government put it. I haven't spent it. I don't want to spend it because I don't need it, but
I did see something, and I kind of predicted this, although Biden hasn't said he's a fan, but I did see something where some people in the House or Senate were pushing for $2,000 a month in income.
Oh,
I saw that too.
That was the one gal from Minnesota, Talib, or I forget what her full name is. $2,000 a month for income. It's like that's basic income. I mean,
yeah.
Do we really want to get into that? I mean, $2,000 a month. I'm soon going to hit retirement, and I have no mortgage. I live by myself. My electric is low. All my expenses are low. I could literally live on $2,000 a month.
Yeah, we own our own house, and so I could totally live on that ourselves too.
I mean, but I would rather work, because if I just sit around the house living on $2,000 a month, I'm going to get fatter than I am.
Hey.
I'm going to get less healthy than I am.
That's exactly what's happened to me.
Yeah, and I think what last year 40% of every dollar in U.S. circulation was printed in 2020. So if we gave everybody $2,000 a month, I see the inflation going up so high that'd be really like they'd be giving you $100 a month, and then we'd be carrying bricks of cash to go buy bread at Hy-Vee or whatever.
Hold on here. I'm going to break out my calculator. I calculated this before, but I forget what the number was. Actually, I won't. But you divide $1.9 trillion by 331 million and see what that works out for man, woman, and child. We'd almost be better off just giving everything.
Yeah.
I
know that first 2000.
And the other thing with this $1.9 trillion budget or pet thing that Biden wants to pass is he's got the $15 an hour minimum wage tucked in there, which obviously isn't going to get by the Republicans, and $15 minimum wage, if you're in New York City or Seattle, okay, that makes sense. Most of the people there are probably getting 15 anyway, because Seattle has a minimum wage of like $16, So for them, it's not a big deal. You do that to small town South Dakota, small town North Dakota, where we're making $9-10 an hour, and you go up to 15. Well, what's going to happen? The person making $15 an hour isn't going to settle for $15 an hour when all the chumps below him, pardon me insulting them if I did, are making 15. So if somebody's at 10 and they get bumped up to 15, that person at 15 is going to want to be bumped up to 20 or 21, because what he's doing is probably more technical than what that lower paid person was. I mean, everybody sooner or later gets the raise. So what happens? Prices go up, which leaves the poor person exactly where they were before.
Yep.
Or manufacturers decide to replace people with machinery, and then you don't have a job, and then you're making $0 per hour.
I kind of have this theory, and it's not really tied necessarily to the minimum wage, but like with inflation and how much the cost of certain items have increased over the last decade, because when you look at like Obamacare, okay, when I was working my manufacturing job at the time, before Obamacare was implemented, you could get family insurance for the whole family, 80-20, low copay or low deductibles, like $500 individual, $1,000 for the family. Like, it was a good insurance plan, okay? And then Obamacare came, and they redid all that, mandated this and that, whatever they did. The cost, you started seeing double-digit percentage increases year over year over year, and pretty soon, within about 5 years, that plan for insurance that was $300 was now costing $800. And then what they had to do, because they couldn't get the cost down anymore, was they had to start providing shittier service. They had to start giving you like 70% coverage instead of 80%. The deductibles and the copays got insane, you know. And then not only that, but so you got the healthcare that, and I talked to farmers specifically in South Dakota that where they were paying, and I don't know if you've got private insurance, Daryl, you're a small business owner, but I've talked to people that were paying as much as $2,000 a month for an insurance plan for them and their wife. And so you factor that in, but then also think about the high cost of housing, which maybe not so much in South Dakota, but maybe in Sioux Falls. You know, you got housing where a 2-bedroom apartment or something like that is getting up there $800, $900, $1,000 a month. Okay, so if you are a family and you're raising a family and you're paying $800 a month for an insurance and you're paying $1,000 a month in rent, there ain't much left. And
well, no, there's not. And you mentioned me with insurance. I don't carry insurance for myself. I've always been healthy. I've always tried to eat properly, even though I eat a little too much. You know, I try to avoid preservatives, artificial colorings, artificial flavors, and all that stuff, which I think Americans are getting way too much of. You know, I did have insurance when I first started in business for myself back in the 90s, early 2000s, and it was just going up way too much a year then. You know, Obama came along and started this whole Obamacare thing, which would have been okay, I guess, but he stuck in all these mandates. You know, somebody like me, well, let's see, 2008, I was 50 years old. Okay, I had 2 kids, you know, had my tubes tied, you know, but insurance coverage had to mandate pregnancy. Well, I don't need pregnancy coverage, you know, but if I had bought a policy, I could have eliminated it. You know, I wasn't going to get anybody pregnant. I could, you know, and there are other sorts of mandates that just didn't fit, you know.
They got rid of the
going to get sick from it. You know, colon cancer, you know, that was probably a mandate. Well, if you're 60-some, it might be an issue. But if you're 20-some years old, the odds of you getting colon cancer are pretty slim, and you should be able to cut that out.
Oh, we lost.
Cut it out.
Yeah. Yeah, but this is what George Jorgensen was mentioning in her campaign. You know, our health insurance is basically like if our car insurance was to cover gas and oil changes and all that.
Right.
You know, as soon as that happens, there's not going to be any competition anymore because you're not even going to see as a customer what the prices of those things are. Your insurance is just going to pay for it. And the insurance company's making a cut of it too, so they don't care what the price is. So they're not going to shop around.
Well, that's one thing Obamacare did was it took away these catastrophic plans where you weren't necessarily paying for all the little this and that, but you had coverage if you were hospitalized.
Right.
And now, like you said, they got all these mandates on what they have to cover. And obviously, as libertarians, I 100% agree that the free market. I personally do not pay for health insurance right now either because the cost does not outweigh the benefit. Because I can just go to the doctor and pay a couple $100 a couple times a year.
Yeah.
I don't need to pay $8,000 a year. You know what I mean? I mean, it's gotten to such a high level that people will make that choice. I mean, I don't have the statistics in front of me, but I would almost gather that, you know, Obamacare was going to reduce the amount of uninsured people, but the numbers got to be the same, if not more.
Well, it did reduce some of the uninsured. I forget what the numbers were. Trying to recall what the numbers were for uninsured. I think it was something like 40 million people were uninsured. And after Obamacare dropped it only to like 20,000, so you still had a bunch of people that weren't uninsured, and most of those were poor people that still couldn't afford it. But I've got some numbers here in healthcare too, and healthcare spending, you know, and again, some of this will be adjusted and I'll let you know when. Back in 50 years ago, as an entire country spent $74 billion on healthcare. 20 years later, that multiplied by 10, $719 billion. And now we spend 3.8 trillion on healthcare. Now let's just adjust those for inflation and population increase, because when you're talking healthcare, you have to put the population increase in too. Basically, 50 years ago, we spent 823 billion after you adjust. Now it's 3.8 trillion, almost 5 times as much. What are we getting for 5 times the money? You know, we've gone from 7.5% of the GDP to over 17, almost 18% of GDP. And this is where I'm going to get in on insurance and government paying for the cost.
Well, I'll tell you what we're getting.
Department.
We're getting our roads, Daryl. That's what we're getting. We're getting roads.
Yeah. The Department of Health and Human Services started in 1980 under President Carter. And that's when all this stuff really started to skyrocket, because what was happening was government was starting to pay for some of our medical bills, you know, and over the years they just keep paying more and more, you know. And when government starts pitching in money to pay bills, what do the hospitals do? They see extra dollar signs floating out there to be gotten, so they just raise their prices. Doctors raise them, surgeons raise them, nurse, you know, everybody raises their price, and the person who needs care is left in the same situation they were. And I got another stat here. Per capita spending in fiscal year 2019 for medical care was $11,582.
Wow.
Out of hand expenses, $1,196. So basically 90% of medical care is either paid by insurance or by the government. You know, you got a third party paying for it. Where's the incentive to live a healthy lifestyle? You know, there is none. You know, when somebody else foots the bill, you know.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I don't like about. I saw your comment earlier, but I don't like about government insurance anyways, because then they use that as an excuse, because like I'm overweight and I have high blood pressure, and so then you get government mandates where all of a sudden, well, Greg Baldwin needs a low sodium diet. Greg Baldwin shouldn't eat red meat on Tuesdays. and you get these people out there that agree with that are like, yeah, you're raising the healthcare costs for all of us, and it's your social responsibility. And, you know, so that's why I would like a free market, you know, because I should be able to do what I want with my
Exactly. You know, but if government's footing the bill, how far are we along, or how far away are we from them saying you're going to be on a restricted diet or you're not going to get care?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's coming down the road eventually, you know. I mean, I probably won't see it in my lifetime, but I wouldn't be surprised if I do. You know, like I said, I don't carry coverage. I don't ask the government to pay for it. If I can't, you know, people ask me, what am I going to do if I get cancer? Well, then I'm screwed, I guess. You know, I'll either try and cure myself with diet, and if I don't, you know, I don't believe I have the right, no matter how sick I get, to ask somebody else to pay the bill. You know, if I can't afford it, my bad. I screwed up.
Yeah, and I think that was predicted, what Greg was mentioning on that George Orwell 1984 book, where the people had to go in front of their state cameras and like do jumping jacks and stuff to make sure they're physically fit enough for the government and for the collective.
Yeah. You didn't pass your presidential physical fitness test. All of a sudden, it's like high school again. We got to run the mile.
You know, I'm older than you guys. I'm 62. I'll soon be hitting retirement age. You know, and like I said, I am a little, you know, I'm overweight some. You know, I like to eat. You know, but I try to eat healthy stuff most of the time. You know, like I said, I try to avoid the artificial preservatives and artificial colors and all that, you know, but then I've had a physical job all my life. I've never had a job where I sat down on my butt for 8 hours a day, you know, and getting out there and doing something and being in constant motion helps with staying healthy. I posted this on Facebook a long time ago. The Scandinavian countries actually have higher cholesterol levels than Americans do, but because they're out there and they're actually doing something, they actually have less, heart conditions, because of it, So you can't just lump everything on cholesterol or that it's bad, it's good. There's just so many variables in everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I've noticed that a lot of what's happening with the healthcare industry is happening with student loans too. Like, the government just injects a bunch of money into the situation, and just like, the healthcare, they're going to raise prices because they see dollar signs. Now you got all these colleges seeing dollar signs, so they raise their prices too.
Right. And I've got that, Harvard, you mentioned education there. I actually wound up looking at this. I was listening to a Reagan speech from 1966. Back then, you could send a kid to Harvard for a little over $3,000, So I decided to start looking up how much Harvard, how expensive that got over the years. Adjusted for inflation, 30 years ago, $25,000. 20 years ago, $33,000. 10 years ago, $40,000. Now it's $48,000 to send a kid to Harvard for 1 year.
Wow.
Remember, those numbers are adjusted for inflation. And again, we get back into government participating. U.S. Department of Education began 1979. Again, under Carter. I hate to pick on Carter, but I'm picking on Carter right now. Oops, got the camera covered with my paper.
You're fine, dude.
And again, when government gets involved and starts giving out, grants for education, low interest loans for educations that don't always get paid back, the colleges see dollar signs, extra money that they can suck in, You would think for the increase in spending in education over the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years, that everybody would have an IQ of 160. Well, we certainly know that isn't true.
Well, with the government money, I thought this was kind of funny. My own experience, I never went to secondary school, so to speak. And then 2 years ago, I had been a welder for about 10 years, but I wanted to get out of doing that. So I went to school up at Southeast Tech in Sioux Falls. I only went for a year. But so my experience, how you say that, so government will allow or will guarantee so much in student loan money per year. And it just so happens to be coincidentally that the amount it costs to go to school that year will pretty much be that exact amount that the federal government has allowed you. So even though I was getting a federal loan to go to school, I had to pay out of pocket for all my books. I had to pay out of pocket for my...
Dude, I do the same thing, man. How the hell? They got that shit locked down.
And there was even one class that I ended up having to take after in order to get my diploma that I had gotten. It was a 1 year. It wasn't a degree, but it was a 1 year diploma. And so there was this one class that I had to take, and I remember really being upset about it because it didn't fall under, like I had already spent my money, and this class actually happened. It was a 40-hour class, but it was to prepare you for this exam. Anyway, the class actually happened like a week after graduation, so it fell under a whole different semester, and there was no money for it, so I just had to pay for that class out of pocket.
Yeah.
And I talked to my teacher. I was like, well, maybe I just won't take that class. And she's like, well, you don't have to, but if you don't, you won't get that diploma. And so anyway, they had figured that perfectly out to where I was going to have to still pay out of pocket, for this class.
I remember with my student loan stuff, they forced you to pay $1,500 to the school to use the school cafeteria, and you couldn't opt out of it. Like, you had to do it. And they made you take a class, and all the classes, oh man, I can't remember. I think it was like $1,800 per class. and this class was literally like a health class, and you just went to the gym, and it was like the semester is like what, 4 months, so it's like, okay, yeah, 3-4 months. So like, okay, so I'm paying, like, I have a gym membership now, and it's like $30 a month. So this class literally was like, you go to the school gym and you work out for the whole thing, and that's it. So it's like, so I'm paying $1,800 for 3 months of a gym. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I had at least one or two joke classes too, where it was like, why am I taking that?
Yeah,
This
that's
is
pointless class.
nonsense.
And they're like, no, this is a mandatory class because the state wants you to be healthy, so you have to do a health class of some sort. And I was like, wow, man.
More government regulation.
So yeah, they'll figure out a way to spend that money.
If you're taking their money, they can make the rules, which is pretty much what it amounts to.
Yeah.
You know, I try to live my life as free of government as possible. And I can give you one example. You know, when it comes to housing, I bought my first house 22 years ago. Well, 23, 1998, back in Pennsylvania. And I went to, I was a first-time home buyer. I went to a mortgage company. They had all sorts of programs for loans and everything else. And I said, I don't want any of your freaking loan programs. I just want a straight-out loan, straight mortgage, nothing special. Well, we got all these government, programs. We can get you a house with 4% interest, which was a heck of a bargain back then, And it's like, no, I don't want it. And they're like, you're crazy. I wound up paying 6.6% interest, just so I didn't have to take a government loan. Mm-hmm. Now, did it cost me extra money? It would have over the long haul, but I live well within my means. They said I was eligible for $110,000. I only bought a house for $77,000. Yeah. I made extra payments on it every month. I paid that thing off in 19 years, not 30. So I wound up saving thousands of dollars, over what I would have paid at 4% if I had taken 30 years. It just comes to common sense economics, and we don't seem to be following that anymore because government encourages us not to be economically sensible.
A lot of people that buy a house nowadays fall into that same exact trap where they get approved for a $200,000 house or a $200,000 loan. So that's exactly what they go do is they buy a $200,000 house instead of, well, what if you could buy a $60,000 house, I mean, your mortgage payments would be next to nothing,
Right. And a number of times over the years, being in flooring, I get into new houses all the time. I've asked some of the builders, that are building these $250,000, $300,000 homes. I say, how do people afford this? And the builder comes right out and says it. They can't. They don't. Pay for 5-6 years so far in debt because they can't make the monthly payment. It ends up getting foreclosed on. And sold for not pennies on the dollars, but dimes on the dollars compared to what it should, and the homeowner's credit rating is ruined and everything else because they took on too much debt, but when government's encouraging you to take more money, a lot of people are going to do it. I mean, that's why we had the housing crisis of 2007 and 8. Mm-hmm. That's why the economy tanked, because housing tanked because people were paying too much.
Yeah, I remember we all got $750 checks back then for the and now we're getting $2,000 checks for the COVID stuff.
Right.
And then we got both Republicans presidents, I would mention too. The fiscally conservative party supposedly.
Right. Clinton was president when I bought the house, but, government just gives away too much money and there's always people with a handout for it. We like to blame government, and this is where I get in trouble with some people. I don't blame just government. I blame people, because it just seems like too many people don't want to work for anything anymore or work for everything. As soon as, well, I call them the Humpty Dumpty Society. Every time there's a little bit of adversity in their life, they fall off the wall, they crack up, and then they expect government to put them back together again.
Yeah.
And we can't live that way. We gotta be self-responsible.
What do you think about this whole GameStop situation?
Ooh, we gotta cover that.
We're gonna cover that. That'd be perfect.
You got like this social media. You got this fringe social media group on Reddit. I think it's called Wall Street Bets. Is like their Reddit page, and they're they targeted a stock GameStop because a particular hedge fund was shorting it, and they were borrowing shares of short. They didn't even have their own shares of short. So, like, they basically forced them to capitulate and lose $13 billion, I believe. But now this hedge fund is trying to get the government to bail them out.
I think they went bankrupt, didn't they?
That's the rumor. I don't know if it's official yet. I heard the rumor. People have been talking about it, but I know that they lost $13 billion, and I don't know, can a hedge fund even survive? Like, they were like the biggest hedge funds in the world, but,
Yeah, I had read something that they had borrowed more.
But my
other
point,
hedge funds had given them a couple billion, and they immediately lost it.
Yeah, but like my point is, like, they're asking the government for a bailout. It's like, man, that's just.
I haven't really read all the details in that. I've just caught headlines of it. I haven't really had a chance to look into it all that much. I know people want the government to look into it too. Again, investing is a game. To gamble. Nothing's guaranteed when you invest. It's not supposed to be guaranteed. If you've got people running the price up on purpose, it probably needs to be looked into. If there's insider trading to run it up there, it definitely needs to be looked into because they're trying to screw people over. But if it's a run up just because a bunch of people decide to buy into it, and all of a sudden it tanks, well, I don't know what you do. I mean, everybody should have the ability and the option to buy into whatever they want to buy into, knowing that there's a risk in it. If you got into the game late and you're buying it after it skyrockets and then you lose an arm and a leg because it tanked, well, that's
that's basically your own
getting
fault.
into it. You don't deserve a bailout because you didn't follow the rules of investing. I mean, number one rule is you don't invest more money than you can afford to lose. Well, number two rule would probably be if something skyrockets, you already missed out. Don't buy in.
Right. Well, what basically happened is this hedge fund called Citadel. What they did is they borrowed shares from whoever owned this GameStop stock, and they were trying to push the price down so that they could. What they were going to do, they're going to sell the shares right away when they borrowed them. They're going to try to push the stock price down and then rebuy back those shares at a lower price, and then they'd give the shares back to whatever corporation they loaned them to them, and then they would make a profit on the difference of the price. But these Redditors and Wall Street Bets, they just kept buying GameStop just like religiously, basically, just to drive the price up on purpose. And what happened was Citadel, that hedge fund, was forced to buy GameStop at like ×3, ×5 what it was worth, what they paid, what was loaned to them for. So they basically they had to pay 5 times what the share was worth just to give the borrowed shares back from who they lended it to them.
Well, it sounds like there was intentional fraud in there somewhere. And if that's the case, then they should be nailed.
But how is hedge fund? How is that even considered an investment? If I'm betting that your company is going to lose money, that's just gambling. That's not an investment. You know what I mean? But the stock market, the idea of the stock market is, it's a publicly traded company, and you can buy shares in it, and you can invest in it, so where that company grows, you make money. And, so these people, these hedge fund people, are legally manipulating the market essentially anyways, because their whole goal and their organization's goal is to drive down the price of that stock.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Which actually hurts real world people. You know what
exactly.
I mean? And
I just think it's weird how you can borrow a share.
I didn't even know you could.
That's just a strange concept.
Borrowing a share is kind of goofy. I mean, you should either have to buy it or sell it.
Yeah.
I've never gotten into hedge funds because hedge funds get complicated and I really don't want to take the time to bother with them. I mean, most of my investing is mutual funds, and when I was younger, I invested in more risky stuff. As I get older, I get a little bit more conservative with the investments because I want to, conserve what wealth I have built up in it, And again, I also don't like to buy individual stocks on a regular basis. I've done it a few times, had some successes, some failures. Mm-hmm. I basically stick to mutual funds, something that's fairly simple. Most of the ones I get aren't broad-based. They're usually industry specific, but if you're going to do that, you still have to do your homework on a regular basis. I mean, a few years back, I bought into sugar, but I did my research. I saw that, there was going to be a shortage of sugar due to worldwide storms. There was going to be an increase in demand in sugar. Logic tells you price is going to go up, buy into it. Again, not a guarantee. I bought into it, and in about 7 months, I nailed down a 40% gain, which was nice. You don't get that kind of gain too often.
Yeah.
The one time I dealt into an individual stock, I bought Tilray stock when it first came out. It was the first marijuana stock that was available to buy in the U.S.
Yeah.
I only bought $2,200 worth. 7 weeks later, I sold it for $8,100.
Nice.
Which was a nice return in 7 weeks. I almost quadrupled my money. And I got out at the right time, too, because within another 7 weeks, it was back down to where the IPO was at 22 a share. So you really have to pay attention to that stuff. You can't invest and then ignore it. At least if you're going to try and play the game. If you're just buying into a broad market thing, you can kind of forget about it. But if you're going to try and pick individual industries, you have to really pay attention. So when I do that, it's usually when I have time to pay attention to it. Otherwise I just stick with broad-based stuff.
What do you think, Devin? Should we go public? Should we sell shares in the Watchdog?
Shares in the LPSD.
Yeah, I'm going to value the company at $1 billion.
Might be a way to get some money.
Well, that's kind of.
Everybody tries to hedge fund us.
That's kind of one thing that drives me a little bit insane now when you talk about Wall Street and just money in general, and the tech industries, and you've got companies out there that have literally never produced, or let's say never profited a dime. And other tech giants will swoop in and buy their company for like $1 billion. And there's definitely a difference between a company that provides like real world value and like a stock value. You can sit here and bump up all these stocks, but their real world value honestly is in their employees and their businesses and their locations and their what they produce in the local economies, and those are what that used to be what was valued. I think one of the biggest mistakes you could ever do is if you owned a company. Let's say you just hypothetically you own a factory somewhere and you employ about 400 or 500 people, and maybe you got 2 or 3 factories, whatever, it doesn't matter. But I think the worst thing you could do is become publicly traded. Because then you're at the mercy of your shareholders, and it's all about just making a buck, and all the people that work for you don't mean a damn thing anymore. And if you had 3 plants, but you can close one of them, and you can get 5 cents a share for your stockholders, I mean, that's the kind of thing that honestly I think ruins this country.
Well, it definitely does. I mean, once you get so big, let's talk about my spices. I'm trying to get those off the ground. This year I had a hard time because of COVID, and all their lockdowns on social gatherings, restaurants where I intended to sell all this stuff, But I didn't start the company because I wanted to turn it into a corporation. I started it because I wanted to turn it into a nice retirement job. I don't want a corporation. I don't hassles of being a corporation. I don't want, to be putting out an IPO and have shareholders and losing control of the company or anything of that nature. I'm just out there to try and make a decent product that I hope people will like. And I care about the customers too. If, I'll even, do customized, spices for them if they want. When you get into a large, being a corporate company, that's a lot harder to do. You lose contact with your employees. It becomes you just care less about them. It's not because you don't want to care about them. It's just too much to care about. You can't care about 20,000 people by yourself.
Well, or like with the shareholder aspect or the board sitting in an office somewhere, there's no personal connection anymore either. So those people have no connection to that community where that business is, or to those employees, or to them they're just numbers.
Yeah, just what I was going to say. They become a number. One of the jobs I had back in Pennsylvania, if you grew up in a small town of Manheim, Pennsylvania, and a small town back there is 5,000. If you grew up there, almost everybody in that town worked for the Manheim Auto Auction at one point or another. I had gone on my entire life until 2008, until I had to work for them. And the only reason I did that was because the economy was tanking and I needed some extra money, but they basically own the town. It's like, if they don't get what they want, we'll just move to another state, and that's not right either. We're letting them become so big that they actually have taken over the town, and that's crazy. The same thing would happen here. If some company moved into Yankton or Clear Lake or whatever town and they got that big, you almost have to give them what they want, because if they lose town, you lose so many jobs.
So maybe we should implement tariffs on like Amazon for operating in South Dakota. Instead of international tariffs, it's like state tariffs. Like,
has that been made official? Is Amazon coming in to Sioux Falls?
Yeah, they bought.
I thought it was. I didn't hear any numbers yet on how many employees they thought it was going to be.
I guess like 1,000 or something.
That's not too bad then.
Yeah. I was thinking of taking over towns. I think libertarians should all just move to South Dakota because we have a really low population here, and we could take over the state pretty easily, I would say.
Nice, I kind of get a kick out of it because Kristi Noem and all the other governors and legislators, come to South Dakota, we want to grow, and coming from Pennsylvania, I moved here to get away from that crap.
Yeah, I was going to say that. It's like, what makes
I love small town America.
Yeah.
I'm fine with the state growing as long as it's libertarian mentality moving in. But if you're going to bring that New York mentality with you, I'd rather you stay in New York.
Yeah, I was going to say that's what makes South Dakota is our small population and the small town atmosphere. Like, I'm from a small town. Greg's from a small town. I think you're from a small town too, Daryl.
Yeah,
So,
Clear Lake's only got 1,200 and some. I love it. I went from a county of 500,000 people to a county of 4,500, and I couldn't be happier. I love it.
I'm about perfectly located because I'm in the middle of Sioux City and Sioux Falls. So if I want to do anything, I can go do stuff. But
that's why I like
my small town.
Like we're not even on the interstate. We're like way off the interstate, off the highway. So It's hard to get here. But we're only like 25 minutes from Sioux Falls. So like if I want to go bowling or something that's not available, I want to go to the movies, I can go to Sioux Falls.
Yeah, that's what I like about Clear Lake. It's like we're not right on the highway. We're 10 miles off of it. We're at 25 miles to get to Watertown, 35 to get to Brookings. Those two towns have virtually everything I could possibly want. And if they don't, Sioux Falls is only like an hour, 20, 25 minutes away. I can go there and get whatever I can't find in Watertown or Brookings. I usually go there a couple times a year anyway to make a Costco run. And now you know my shopping habits. And Clear Lake's just nice and quiet and innocent. The only thing I don't like about it is the Republic. I said this at our little meeting the other night. It's so Republican controlled. They think a libertarian is a liberal vegetarian. I mean, they have no idea what a libertarian is.
I get that so much. People are like, "Oh, you're from the Liberal Party?" Like, no, libertarian.
Yeah.
Not Liberal Party. What the hell is a Liberal Party?
We've been called. I've had booths places before, and one time the best one they said we're the Liberation Party.
Well, I mean, kind of, yeah, but that's not the name. But
no,
as long as we're not the PLO,
we are trying to liberate America. God damn it!
We are the real Patriot Party.
And I forgot to.
Broken up.
Yep. Hopefully comes back soon here.
We did have a couple comments on D Live.
Okay. I wanted to see what the national debt clock was. We started, so I could have spit out how much.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention.
Finally over, but I did see it's grown like 100,000 in a matter.
Yeah. I was gonna mention 7 minutes ago. The national debt has grown $360 million since we started this. Since we started the podcast, we're only halfway through. Greg was going to mention our D Live comments. Go ahead, Greg.
So some guy, I think it's Busted Damebot. Yeah, I'm not sure, but he said, "Great show, guys." We got a new follower, Oscar.
Do we have any lemons yet?
Yeah, Oscar Rommel donated a lemon.
Yeah, apparently, I think this is like a cryptocurrency thing where if you get like these people that watch D Live get what's called lemons for watching a show, and then they can give that lemon to the producer of the show. And then that producer can cash the lemons out or like trade them for Bitcoin and then trade the Bitcoin for money or something.
Oh, okay.
So we got like, let's see. Echo Chamber Podcast, I think, gave us one ice cream, which is 10 lemons. Buzz Down Bot gave us 5 lemons. So, hell yeah. Thanks, guys. We appreciate that.
You're making money.
All right, that's what we like to hear. Okay, I'm just looking at this U.S. debt clock again, and we can see that right now the percentage of the federal debt to the GDP is 130%. That's higher than it was in World War II when we were fighting a worldwide war.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what would happen if for some reason another world war broke out?
Yeah, we'd be
had to finance that.
We'd have like no money to pay the military. We'd all be like, it's like, oh, sorry, we're already 27 trillion in debt. So,
right.
It's kind of a fight for pride, I guess.
Oh, and to get back on that, when we were talking about the GDP in 2 years worth of everybody paying their wages, just want to explain how we got to that, because the national debt's 27 trillion, almost 28, as you can see now. You know, the GDP is generally around 22 trillion. I believe that has it at 21.3, but it's generally around 22 trillion. Governments, federal, state, and local, make up 40% of that. 40% of all the money spent in this country is spent by a government. That means the private GDP after taxes is about 13 trillion, and we're 27 trillion in debt. So basically, every person's take-home money for 2 years would be required to pay the debt.
Well, I think that highlights the big issue. Really, is that government is way too intertwined with the economy.
Yeah.
Because they spend way too much. So if government pulls back and reduces spending like they need to, we will see the economic impact of that.
Oh, my, yes.
Doesn't mean it doesn't need to happen, though.
I mean, could you imagine getting your money back and spending it on what you want to spend it on? I mean, that would be great. And the funny thing is, I don't know if you saw my forum or not when I was running for Senate, but I was in a debate with Deutsch and Mills and Wick, and the very last question of the night, Mills came out and was talking about government and how it actually was a lot bigger than what he believed it to be, which I dropped on that real quick. He's saying it's bigger than he ever believed it to be. And when it got around to my turn, it's like, well, I have nothing to answer to this question, too, because Mill sums it up for me. He said government's a lot bigger than what he believed it to be. That's what I've been arguing all night, but yet they vote for him.
Yeah, that's one of the things that grinds my gears, man. It's like, just give us one win. Like, let's prove ourselves we're a party that's dedicated on our principles. We're always questioning each other's authenticity of being a libertarian. We'll get the job done. If you want America to be saved, we need a big blue wave, or not blue, a big gold wave.
Yeah, gold wave. You got
a gold wave, a big gold wave.
I mean, that's one thing I like about the Libertarian Party. We like everybody to stick to the platform, but we don't need everybody to stick to the platform. I have disagreements with some. I think there are areas where government can be beneficial. I don't think government needs to get out of everything, but I think they need to get out of most everything.
So
if you want to be into something else, let's amend the Constitution to be in it. Because if you can't get support, 4/4 of the states and 3/4 of the Congress and 3/4 of everything, it probably shouldn't be passed. We shouldn't be able to pass laws based on 50% plus one.
Do you think that the income tax, I've been kind of watching a lot of videos, and there's a lot of conspiracy videos on the subject that are saying that the income tax amendment actually didn't get 3/4 of the state legislators to approve it. What are your thoughts on that? Do you
from what I have read and researched, 3/4 of the states approved it, but there are, I think, 2 states where the paperwork was never officially done properly.
Yeah,
and the Secretary of State at the time, I believe it was him, declared it ratified without actually having the paperwork in hand.
Yeah, that's the gist of it. So, yeah, I don't know. I think we need to look back on these issues and make sure that, because I think this particular income tax thing was passed in the Congress like on Christmas Day, so nobody was paying attention to it. It was 1913, so it was back in like telegram days.
Right. And you also need to remember 2 or 3 times before that they tried to pass an income tax, and the Supreme Courts at the time said no, it's unconstitutional. Well, Wilson came in, he pretty much stacked the Supreme Court. Yeah. And that's how they wound up getting it passed. They passed it, and then the Supreme Court said, yeah, it's magically constitutional now. How does something that was denied 3 times, as unconstitutional suddenly become constitutional? Well, it was, Supreme Court nominations that did it.
Yeah, like when they first pitched it, they were like, "Oh, this is only going to apply to like the super wealthy, so you don't have to worry about it." And then I forget the statistic, but I think it's like 10 years later, like everybody was paying income tax now, and just the rich people.
Well, same thing happened with Social Security too. You get it at 65. The Social Security tax rate was like 3%, and it was only on what the heck was it? Something to do with $3,000. Something that nobody even earned at the time. People didn't live long enough to collect it. 3% was super cheap at the time. But that's never been amended for modern day circumstances. If it wasn't intended to go to the average person, we never. I mean, in 90 years, we've raised the age 2 years and 8 months, I think. It's people are now living to 78, not 58.
Yeah, I remember this graphic that was circulating on social media where it was like, if you would just spend every dollar that you spent on Social Security taxes and you just bought gold with that, you'd have like 4 times as much money as what you're going to get paid out from the Social Security itself or something. That was an interesting tidbit.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you to repeat that. You froze out on mine.
Oh, I was just saying I saw like there's a graphic circulating, an infographic where it was saying that if you spent all the money you spent on Social Security taxes, if you would just invest into gold instead, like your whole life, you'd have like 4 times more money than what you'd ever expect to get from your Social Security.
Well, yeah, and that kind of irks me because I'm self-employed most of my life, so I've been paying the employer share and the employee share. So I've paid in quite a bit over the years, and I just, I'm not a fanatic investor. I'm not the best investor in the world, but I've done pretty good with what little I've had. And I just look at all the hundreds of $1,000s I've paid in Social Security taxes and think what I could have done with that if I had been investing that instead. And it's like, I don't even need Social Security. I could live quite well.
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons why I like libertarians is, if we would just invest our own money, throughout our whole lives, we'd have way more money than what the government would ever provide to us through a tax.
And I don't know if Brazil, actually, I think it was Peru. And I don't know if they still do it. They had Social Security. At one point, they eliminated it, but they made you put that money in investments instead. It wasn't a Social Security plan. It was your own private plan, but you still had to put in the same amount. And I think there is a limitation on what type of investments it could be. I haven't researched that in a long time to see what the end results of that were, whether it's working for them or not. Maybe something I'll have to do in the next few weeks and post it on my Dakota Rustler page.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that might be a reason why the government kind of wants us to be unhealthy and doesn't give us any incentive to be healthy is that, you have to be a certain age before you even get into that Social Security check. So they probably want you to knock you down before you even get there.
Personally, I'd like to see Social Security disappear gradually. I don't think it's going to happen, but my ideal thing would be anybody over 50, I think, should get the full benefits because they're so close. They deserve to get back what they paid. But
Yeah.
once you get below the age of 50, for every year, knock off 2 or 3% on what they have to pay in, and then knock off, that same percentage on what they get back when they retire. So by the time you're down to 18-year-olds who won't have to pay in anything, by the time they retire, they won't be getting anything either. We could eliminate Social
I think
Security if we did that for a long stretch of time.
Yeah, that sounds like a good plan. I saw that Thomas Massey was tweeting that since Donald Trump is getting impeached while he's not president anymore, that he'd like to impeach FDR, who passed the Social Security Act. I think I agree with Thomas Massey too. I think FDR had violated the Constitution several times.
Oh yeah.
Not to mention the Japanese internment camps, or basically concentration camps. So, yeah. I thought that was pretty
He
fun.
violated a bunch of times. I don't know how you try to impeach somebody who no longer holds office. Because, if they can impeach Trump now that he's a private citizen, they can impeach you and me. So we can never become president again. How about that?
Damn it.
Yeah, I think the Constitution says
maybe that's what we need to do as libertarians. We need to start impeaching people who haven't even held office yet.
No, we got a guillotine for that. That's the politician retirement plan there.
Which reminds me, some of my suggestions I had for trying to fix this thing, some of them would take constitutional amendments. I think the number one thing that we have to do as libertarians is educate people that government money isn't free money. It comes from taxpayers. It comes from you, it comes from your neighbor, it comes from your boss, and eventually it comes from your children and your grandchildren. It's not free money. You're spending your kids' money nowadays. If you love your children, you don't spend their money. Who wants to steal from their children? Another thing I'd like to see is the elimination of government pensions, because if they didn't get a pension, they wouldn't want to be in office for their entire life. Hey, I wish I could retire on the pensions they get.
I think if you serve 6 years in Congress, you get your congressional salary for life after.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
I gotta be honest, when it comes to pensions, it's not just politicians. In the private sector, or the private sector, there's no retirement. Very little companies have any sort of retirement nowadays. Right. But you look at government employees, and how many times do you see somebody in their 50s who's retired?
Right.
It's like, well, what do you mean you're retired? Well, I collect a check from the government every month. And for the next 30 freaking years, because I worked at the post office, or I was a teacher, or in the military. You can say what you will about the military, but I'm just lumping them in because you can retire after like 20, 30 years on the job and only be like 50 years old and collect a check for the next 30-something years. But, nobody in the private, very few people in the private sector are
that type of a deal.
Yeah.
And the thing is, too, even if we eliminated government pensions, that wouldn't do much to eliminate the debt when we're just talking dollar for dollar, because it's an extremely small portion of what the government spends. But it would keep them from being lifetime politicians. We'd have a more constant, transition, a turnover.
If a 401k is good enough for you and I, then it's good enough.
Exactly. And that kind of feeds into my next suggestion, which would be Congress should only get paid what their state's median income is. Yeah. Why should they get $180,000 a year when the average person from their own state's only getting $50,000 or $55,000? Make them have the average wage of their average constituent and see how long they want to stay in there.
Well, their rebuttal is going to be, well, if you don't want us to take bribes, you better give us a fat paycheck from the tax coffers.
You know,
But they take Brian's anyways, so it doesn't matter.
well, yeah.
Yeah, if you want to speak about insider trading or whatever, Nancy Pelosi bought a bunch of Tesla stocks right before Joe Biden announced they're gonna sign another big major contract with Tesla, and then like their stocks shot up, and she made a big profit on that. It's like, and that happens all the time. There's like a couple senators that were like right before this big COVID thing came out, they bought a bunch of stocks in like some COVID company or whatever. Made a bunch of money in that.
I guess it's nice when you have insider information.
Yeah.
You know, another thing I'd like to see, which will never happen because it'll take a constitutional amendment, would be nobody can serve more than 12 years total in Congress, House and Senate combined, you know. But we all know that's not going to happen. They're not going to vote to limit the amount of time they can spend in office.
I wish they would add that amendment to the state constitution, because in the state they aren't actually capped at the number of years. They're just capped at the consecutive term.
Right. You know, that needs to be the total number of years too. Yeah. Deutsch did that. He served a term, backed out, and then he's back in again for 2 more. You know, and all they got to do is they can be in there constantly. It's like, come on, give us a break. That's not term.
What about instances when we actually do have like a Ron Paul in Congress? Because I think didn't he serve for like 30 years too? Wouldn't that kind of like, I don't know, wouldn't that might bite us a little bit on the liberty movement?
Hopefully Ron Paul's got enough of followers and he's teaching enough of people. He knows people who can step into his position after 12 years.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, because you're weighing like one good congressman versus like 1,000. You know?
I'd rather lose one good congressman than keep 534 more.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll be back.
Yeah, no, it's just ridiculous. You know. Oh, we never wanted to get into housing a little bit too. You know, and this kind of goes back to the debt where I said it was $140,000 per worker. I did say that 4 states have median home values of less than that: Mississippi, Arkansas, Oklahoma. I forgot to write the other one down. South Dakota, by the way, has a median home value of $167,000.
So basically, we all owe the government a house, essentially.
Essentially, yes.
The
national median is $253,000. Oh, and I mentioned earlier, too, that our yearly expenditures per capita by the government just for the last fiscal year was $14,400. South Dakota's median mortgage payment is $1,298, which works out to a little over $14,000 a year. You know, so we're basically owe the government as much as, you know, again, we owe the government a house. You know, and the housing kind of got out of hand too when HUD got started, you know, housing and urban development, you know, with all the government, you know, rent programs and everything else that drives up prices. Rent goes up, eventually housing prices go up too. You know, that was started under LBJ in '68.
Yeah, that's kind of like the same with the education.
Right.
Where with housing, it's the same thing. They guarantee a certain amount of money.
Right.
So guess what everyone's charging?
Yeah. Anything the government gets involved in, the price skyrockets over the decades because everybody's just adding that government payment to what they're charging.
Well, I tell you what, there's probably a lot of HUD people out there, you know, people that, because private landowner, or, you know, can become HUD housing, you know, they can apply for that
and
rent out to low income people. But We talked about it last week on the podcast. We talked about Biden's executive orders, and one of his executive orders was a moratorium on evictions because of like COVID or whatever.
Right.
So, the way I took that executive order to mean is basically if you get government money, like a HUD housing situation, and you're a landlord, you can't get rid of your tenants now. So good luck with that.
Yeah, pretty much the way it is. And what about the rights of the landlord? The landlord probably has family and kids, and
What if they're
has to pay too. If you can't kick out somebody who's not paying for somebody who can, where is that right?
Yeah, there's a bunch of landlords posting pictures of what's happening to their properties. They're basically just getting trashed by the tenants because they know they don't have to. The government's like protecting their at the moment because of the COVID stuff.
Yeah, but they're can't kick us out, so let's trash the place.
It's costing his property owners like tens of thousands of dollars to, re-renovate their homes to make them suitable for the next tenants and stuff.
Over the years, I've often thought I should have got into rental units, buy some, rent them out, But the horror stories, if you get good tenants in, it's probably a good deal. Okay. But I've heard a lot of horror stories from landlords, and it's like so many times I think I'm glad I didn't get involved in it.
Yeah,
I want that hassle. And especially with COVID now, if you can't kick somebody out, because they're trashing their place and because of COVID, it's like, no, I don't want to deal with that.
Yeah, if you got a bad tenant in there, a lot of cities and states are different, but if you got a bad tenant in there, you could lose income for 4 or 5 months easy.
Oh, easy.
Years even.
Years even. And it's, a lot of it sometimes too is a landlord because they don't take the time to vet their tenants, the way they should. First guy that comes along with money, it's yours, and the guy ends up being trashing a place. I see that a lot, doing flooring for a living. I got in a house one time. There's a nice little story. It was a guy who owns a lot of property in Watertown. He has some really nice ones and he has some really junky ones and a bunch of stuff in between, and tenant moved out. We had to go back in, measure the job, for a new carpet and do this and that and everything else. Well, I went in with the contractor and the place was trashed. The kitchen sticky, the bathroom floor was sticky. The carpet looked like somebody had a hot rod in there and just spun the tires on it. They stole light bulbs. This was broke. That was broke. It's like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. It's going to take a lot of fixing up for this thing. Well, we measured it, and I'm going down the road to my next job. My hands are up like this on the steering wheel. And it's like all of a sudden I'm going, I had fleas, and it's like, I am not going back into that apartment until that thing gets flea bombed, Who lives like that, And could you imagine if that person had COVID and you can't kick them out? Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be crazy.
Call in, join the show. Lines are open.
Yeah. Read that number out, Greg.
605-857-3387. Call in. Tell us if you think the national debt is manageable or out of control.
We're not supposed to laugh when you say, do you think it's manageable? And by the way, the national debt did go up another $200 million since the last time we talked about it.
Yeah. That's insane.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
freedom isn't free, Daryl.
So far, those national debt, the duration of this podcast, it's gone up 30% of South Dakota's annual tax revenue.
Oh, geez. That's just sad. This that clock ought to be stuck on everybody's computer screen.
Yeah.
Every time they log on. With how much it is per capita blinking, if it's even up there per capita.
Maybe they could come up with a cryptocurrency that's tied to the national debt, and as that's going up.
Crap, we had a call, but I didn't click the button fast enough.
Call it.
Yeah, if you just called a call again, sorry, I wasn't quick enough on the draw there. Let me get it pre-gamed up here. I'll get it. Somebody's calling for Mitchell, though, so they're from South Dakota.
Mitchell.
Yeah, so I really want this caller to come back on.
Is it Tara?
Here we go.
Is it Sean?
Oh, it is Tara.
Oh.
Accept. Oh my gosh, I'm trying to press 1. Where's my keypad? Ah, damn it. Okay, I got the keypad up. Damn it. Okay. I missed it again, Tara. Tara, call back in. I'm sorry. I'm having so many issues right now.
Technical difficulties.
Yeah. We get so rare that we get like an actual caller. Well, I guess not rare. Last episode, I know we didn't get any. So.
We get the few random people that join the podcast from time to time,
which is always good.
Okay, here we go. I got it this time.
Ringing. Oh, she can't hear us though. We can only hear her.
Oh no.
Yeah, that's our limitation.
Tara, can you hear me?
Can you chat with her?
Can you guys hear her?
I can't hear her.
Did you hit that button? Isn't there a button there?
Yeah, I hit the button. I'm the only one that can hear you. Nobody else can hear you but me.
You can repeat the question.
Hey, click the link. Just click the link in the description. It says StreamYard. It says click to join broadcast.
There you go.
Yeah,
click it.
It says click link to join broadcast in the description. Tara, if everybody's listening, is their at-large member of the Libertarian Party of South Dakota. No, you can be on Facebook. You just have to click the link. It says click link to join broadcast. Just click that link right after that.
She's a boomer.
We're at this phone issue. Yeah.
So when, Daryl, do you know, when was the first national debt?
We founded the country in 1789 with the Constitution, so I'm going to say 1789.
Didn't we used to fund everything, though, with, like, war bonds back then, or no?
Yeah, a lot of it.
I mean, I know there
that's
was...
the argument I made when Trump passed tariffs, because we made most of our money off tariffs back.
Well, I know there was
income taxes and everything else. We probably did
taxes though.
There were taxes. I don't know what.
The whiskey rebellion. That is what comes to mind.
Obviously, there was a tea tax at one time because we had the Boston Tea Party. And I never really researched what the taxes were and what they paid for. But again, I can write that down and come up with that in a future
Not a big deal
for my page.
Not a big deal for me. It seems like the debt, and I'm sure I'm wrong, but it seems like the debt never really was significant until Reagan. Reagan doubled it, and then from then on, it just.
Well, if you go out and you buy a house, okay, for the average person, if you go out and buy a house, you go to a mortgage company and try to get a loan, they're going to tell you, or at least it always used to be the formula, your annual salary times 2.5. So if you made $40,000, you could afford $100,000 home. Anything after that, you probably weren't going to get the loan because the bank figured you were going to default. They'd have to foreclose and go through the hassle of selling it, And our debt as a percentage of our free GDP or effective GDP, as I call it, like I said, that's $13 billion when you eliminate government spending. Now we're in debt for 27, so that's 2 times. By the time Biden's done, it's going to be well over 2.5. At that point, if you put it into mortgage terms, we're reaching that point where a bank wouldn't give you a loan. So if we reach that point, our country's going to quit buying our debt. Our investors going to quit buying the debt. Which gets back to, who owns our debt. Most of our debt is owned by individuals and institutions, through 401 plans, bonds, things of that nature.
Oh, they lost me.
Next in line is the Social Security Fund. The Social Security Fund owns a lot of the debt. The Federal Reserve.
We got you,
Civil
Tara.
Service Retirement Fund.
What? I'm not on the show.
The
You're on the
Military
show.
Retirement Fund. Welcome, Tara.
Oh, whatever. You guys hear me?
Tara,
Yes.
yeah, we can hear you.
Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh my gosh. Okay, do not show my face. All right.
You
Hey,
got-
Daryl, I'm really
Turn out the
impressed.
lights.
No, you guys, I love this show tonight, and I watch every Sunday night. I think it's great. And if the whole state of South Dakota would watch this, they'd wake up and learn something, and they would ditch both parties and come to the Libertarian Party.
Yeah.
Right? Absolutely. But anyway, yeah, Daryl, you were talking about those, housing loans. Wasn't that
Yes.
that Dodd-Frank? I mean, you're so much smarter than me. But remember when they used to? Was that back during Obama or whatever? They were doing all these low interest
That was
loans.
Dodd-Frank,
Or
I think, was
Clinton.
actually during Bush, if I
Dodd-Frank,
remember.
correct? Yeah, and that screwed everything up.
Well, anytime government does anything, they screw it up.
Anytime government gets involved in anything, it's a big
I
mess
wish the
up.
national government would be like the South Dakota government and only
Wait a
meet for
minute.
3 months out of the year.
Well, we are a welfare queen. I mean, you got states like California and New York that are subsidized in South Dakota because we'd blow away in the wind if we
That's
didn't get subsidized to balance our budget. And that $1.2 billion that the governor cried, "Oh, state of emergency! Oh, COVID! Let's get all the money we can get." If she was a true conservative and valued our libertarian values and freedom, why is she running to D.C., every other week begging for money for South Dakota?
We didn't
And
even
look at where that money is going, that COVID money. So,
we didn't even get into that. I mean, states are just as bad as people. The people have their hand out for freebies.
oh, totally.
And politicians fill them up while states do the same thing.
Well,
They got their hand out for
South
freebies, too.
Dakota is the size of a small suburb of some of these big cities. So we should be able to be totally independent of federal subsidies, but we're totally dependent on federal subsidies. We're here's the deal too. Okay, our governor, I don't know if you like her or not, but I think she's a hypocrite. And she says, "Oh, I'm all for freedom. I'm a conservative, whatever." And how much has your family benefited in federal ag subsidies and COVID money. Did you know her family got thousands of dollars in COVID money? Her husband
Applied for a loan or what?
I could have applied. I could have gotten money, but you know what?
Daryl, did you get
I'm
one?
going to stick to my
I didn't know.
libertarian values.
I know that her ranch got a government subsidy.
Yeah, like, oh,
millions of
yeah,
dollars.
like $4 million over the years, and her husband, who's works for the federal government in federal insurance, crop insurance, got $55,000. So practice what you preach. Don't say, "Oh, we're independent, we're conservative," and then cry out for all this money. And she gets on all these conservative networks and says, "Oh, freedom, we're a freedom state." Well, duh, we're under 1 million people.
Do you think she's running for president next time?
No, because I think Trump will be running. Oh, definitely she would. No, it's only about raising money. She's got a PAC for Senate, for president, for governor, for her, Christie store, buy hoodies and all that, this and that. It's all about the money. And when she was flying all over the United States, supposedly campaigning for Trump, and the only reason why she was campaigning for Trump is because he's very popular in South Dakota, and she's reaching out to his base, kind of like the guy from Texas. What's his name? It's all politics. It's political theater, and it's all about how can politics benefit me.
I saw that the House was trying to pass a bill that would reveal how much was spent on Kristi Noem's security while she was campaigning for Trump.
Did you see
know that.
her? I was just okay. So you guys know Neil Tapio, right? He was in the state legislature. Okay, and he ran. Didn't he run for House or Senate or whatever, United States Senate? But anyway, so now all of a sudden he's on the Kristi Noem bandwagon. And I told him right on his Facebook page, and I said, "Neil, Kristi Noem, if you ran against John Thune in a primary, Kristi Noem would never support you. So how can you support somebody that doesn't support your values? Because you claim to be a conservative."
Yeah.
And there's no way. And so she's trash talking. You can go to South Dakota War College. That's the Republican blog of South Dakota that Kristi Noem donates to. And Pat Powers, Piggy Pat or Little PP, is totally trashing Taffy Howard, who is fiscally conservative out in Rapid City and a veteran. So, yeah, it's all a big game. It's all about control. It's all about money. And it is an oligarchy of South Dakota. And I know I was listening. Because I've been on the phone a little bit tonight, so I haven't been able to take in all of your show. But I know, Daryl, you were talking about communities with government involvement. Well, the Development Corporation is another branch of state government. It's a nonprofit, quasi government, another entity, kind of like the Gear Up and Mid Central Education, all those grants. They all go to their donors, and layers and layers of government and nonprofits that are tied to the state, such as the Governor's Office of Economic Development. And here, right in Mitchell, our Development Corporation owns over $4.5 million of property that should be owned by private entities. Mm-hmm. And what they do is the city will buy up old buildings or knock buildings down, whatever, take everything off the tax rolls, turn it over to the Development Corporation, and then they decide and then they spend tens of thousands of dollars. That's taxpayers' dollars. That's our money. And then they give it or sell it for dimes on a dollar to their cronies. So, yeah, people don't know what goes on. But I've run for office enough times. I've run for mayor twice and city council, and I did my homework, and I did a lot of research. And these guys know that I know, because I don't go by hearsay. I go right down to the city and talk to the finance director or the city administrator. I get the records, or the city attorney. So, yeah, but there's a lot of cronyism that goes on in South Dakota, even in these little communities. But 90% of the people, they vote because, it's all red meat. It's like, oh, I'm pro-life. I'm a conservative. Family values. That's all they vote for. They don't know the issues. They don't pay attention.
Yeah, I remember a friend of ours talking about how a school board election, they were having a conversation, and somehow being pro-life came up in the conversation. And it's like, this is a school board election. Like, what are you talking about?
I know. But hey, that's how they get votes.
Yeah.
They exploit the issue. They exploit it. But listen, Devin, hey, I was just talking to Laura Hubble, and she is a libertarian, okay? I know. You don't. She goes, but Devin doesn't like me. I go, he likes you. He just doesn't like that you don't like to smoke pot. Socially, yeah, she's probably a little bit on the other side, but I mean, we're like best friends, and we are opposite on social issues. Although I am pro-life, but I look at it this way: government, stay the hell out of it. I don't like exploitation of people using whether it's pro-life or pro-choice to raise money and get elected for office, and that's what they do. That should be, you're going to have abortion no matter what. The government isn't going to stop abortion. Never has, never will.
Yeah, I think it's really like a judge.
Stay the hell out of it.
Yeah, I think it's more like a judge's issue. I don't know if any.
I think Christy Noem's a hypocrite, how you said earlier, too.
Absolutely hypocrite.
She's sitting here filing lawsuits challenging the constitutionality of a voter initiative, but yet here she is trying to pass abortion legislation that she knows will be deemed unconstitutional. It'll get dragged through the courts.
It's campaign season, Greg.
And we pay for that. Though.
Absolutely, and it's campaign season, and she knows she's going to raise a ton of money off pro-lifers. It's a red meat issue.
That's what I'm saying. I don't know. I think she might have
it's all political.
She might have some aspirations higher than South Dakota's governor, I think.
Well, you know what?
I kind of think she does, too.
Yeah, she's been out in other states.
I think she's all about the money because she's got all these PACs. And she's, she's an opportunist.
Running for president.
The thing is, she gets on all these conservative talk shows and stuff.
Very lucrative.
She's got a lot of.
Yeah, South Dakota, we're open for business. Well, excuse me, you try to lock South Dakota down. First of all, it's unconstitutional. She would have to go through the South Dakota legislature. Okay, she's got enough attorneys to tell her that you can't do it. And yeah, she'd be a fool to do it. Anybody would be a fool to try to do it. She did kind of do it in the beginning in Sioux Falls or whatever. Laura Hubble knows all that. She's posted everything, the executive orders, but that didn't last long. But and here's another thing, this hydroxychloroquine, okay? Now that is it the U.S. Medical Journal just posted that probably 80% of the deaths could have been eliminated if people would have taken the hydroxychloroquine, because in like Africa South Africa, they have malaria. Well, they take that hydroxychloroquine for malaria. Well, guess what? Nobody's getting COVID. And these frontline doctors that went out to D.C. a few months ago, and Trump even kind of promoted hydroxychloroquine, but the medical industrial complex does not want hydroxychloroquine. And we had 190 doses of it in Sioux Falls that the governor said, nope, we're not going to, distribute those. Because guess why, guys? In a lot of countries, you can buy it over the counter. It's a therapy drug, and it won't kill you. But they would rather have a vaccine or, all this expensive medication. Hydroxychloroquine is very cheap. So it's like a sulfite or whatever. But yeah, so that's where I'm at on that. But
all right, well, one question.
Yeah.
Before you go, Tara, are they going to arrest Jason Roundsberg?
Well, that should have been done 3 months ago or whenever this thing happened. At least, question him, put him under, turn him in for questioning. And here's the thing: why are they using these state attorneys? These what are they called? Tucker, what are they called? State
attorney, yeah.
State attorneys. What they should do is hire an independent prosecutor.
Yeah, just to take it to a grand jury. I think there's enough evidence now. I don't see why they're waiting.
Yeah, because they brought North Dakota in, but did you know that North Dakota was also involved in the EB-5 and I think the Westerhouse murders supposedly. Yeah, so it's like, why are you using them again when they didn't, do anything the first time? But they should have really brought in an investigative prosecutor. I
don't know that I trust North Dakota. I see that there's just
I don't trust North Dakota. I don't trust South Dakota. Don't trust them.
Just another Republican family members up there in North Dakota.
They're like
got a bunch of cousins.
Yeah.
Cousins. No, but hey, you guys are doing a great job. Keep it up. I'm going to go now, but I just talked to Laura. Devin, and you guys got to make up. Seriously, she thinks you absolutely hate her, or she thinks the Libertarian Party hates her. And I said, no, they don't. But whatever. But she'd be very interesting to visit with, because she did kind of announce that she's running against Kristi Noem as an independent. So it'd be kind of nice to hear her.
Tell her to come on, click that link, and she can come on Hedgehog Watchdog.
Okay, sounds good, guys. Keep up the good work.
Right.
Later, bye. You bet, bye. You bet. Bye-bye.
All right. Well, we're coming up on the 2-hour mark, so I just want to mention that the Fix for New York is coming up next on DLive. You can check that out on dlive.tv/free speech media. And they should be airing here in about a minute or so. So,
so how are we going to solve this debt crisis? Huh?
Yeah.
I think we're going to have about as much luck as Congress does. Until you get people in Congress that actually are serious about debt, it's not getting solved. That's why we need libertarians, because we're the only ones that actually truly mean what we say.
I almost feel like the only way that it's honestly ever going to go away is they're just going to keep spending until it can't take it anymore. And then you're going to have a 50-state breakup. and then the debt just kind of dissolves because essentially it's the federal debt, right?
Right.
It's not South Dakota's debt.
No.
So we don't, if that were to happen, at least from our end, it's paid. Well, it's taken care of.
I hate to say it, but I think it's all going to end up in an economic collapse. You've probably seen my postings more than once. Back in 1990, I was only 32 at the time, but I've seen enough of history and read enough of history. I saw where the nation was going, and I predicted by 2020 we'd either have a Great Depression or a Civil War. Well, neither happened, but we're not too far away from either at this point, and if it doesn't happen sometime within the next 10 years, I'll be amazed. I just don't see how we can keep doing this without eventually having the house fall in. People need to get serious about, being self-responsible and quit counting on the government.
Yeah, we definitely need to make some major cuts.
Yeah, I would be happy if we just didn't. Forget about paying the debt off right now. I would just be happy if they balanced the budget and didn't deficit spend. That's it.
And
that's too much to ask, though.
That would actually be the perfect way to do it. If we had just balanced the budget so the debt doesn't increase, eventually inflation would shrink that debt down to something manageable that we could pay off. Yeah. But we won't even take the balanced budget part of it seriously. That's the sad part.
Yeah, I'd just like to see, like I said, I'd just like to see, no deficit spending for like 4 years. Is that too much? For like 4 years, no deficit spending.
Baby steps, it just makes a little progress.
Exactly, but nobody wants to. And when the Dems are in control, the Republicans come out, and say, oh, we need to get it under control. But then 4 years later, Republicans control everything. And then the Dems say we got to get everything under control. They're the same party. They just wear a different freaking suit every 4 years. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And then, again, that's kind of why I always give Republicans a lot more shit than I give a Democrat. Because a Republican will sit here and tell me, they'll talk to me and tell me a bunch of stuff that I might agree with. But I know it's not going to happen.
Exactly. When it comes to either party, I lean more towards the Republican side than I do the Democratic side. But at least I'll give the Democrats, the respect of when they want to tax you, they'll tell you they want to tax you.
Yeah, that would be the one problem I'd say about my balanced budget proposal is that all they would do is decide that we just need to tax everyone more.
Exactly.
They wouldn't actually cut anything. They'd just say we need to tax more.
Yeah. If you want to get this in too, we got even back when it was 20 trillion, I did a little bit of research because Democrats always want to tax the rich. Tax the rich, nail the 1%. Well, I looked up the wealth of the 400 most richest people in the U.S. If you took their total wealth, it would not pay off the debt. Yeah. So you're not going to balance the budget or pay off the debt by taxing the rich. It isn't going to happen. We need to quit spending.
And we were talking earlier about all these inflated stock prices and inflated market values and stuff like that. And so when you talk about somebody like Bezos from Amazon or Bill Gates or whatever, like most of their net worth, I don't know exactly what percentage of it, but a lot of their net worth is literally tied to shares in a stock, It's just shares in their company. It's not, so whatever that stock is trading at that particular day, they say, well, Jeff Bezos is worth X many billions of dollars. But tomorrow, if that stock tumbled, he would be worth a fraction of what they say he's actually worth.
Yeah,
so you can't even physically take everything he has.
No, you can't.
It's not physical.
Right. Stock market tanks 10%, they tank 10%, pretty much.
Yeah.
I think isn't the statistic if you take like all the wealth from all the richest people in America, it's like only like $250 billion or something.
Actually, when I did
Maybe
that,
it's more.
it actually worked out. It did work out into the trillions, but it was only like a little over 1 trillion.
Like 1 trillion. Oh, yeah, that makes more sense. So that'd literally pay 1/3 of the tax revenue of 1 year.
Yeah, not even a third.
Here's what we need. We need
That's
some
how
space
much
bucks.
hand it's gotten.
We need some space bucks. If a space buck is worth $2 trillion, the conversion rate, see now 27 trillion, that's nothing because we just get a few space bucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, one thing that is curious.
Maybe if we're lucky, space aliens will invade and destroy us all.
One thing that is kind of curious, I've read a few different articles on this. They're talking about technologies possibly advancing enough to where we're going to start like mining certain they've talked about mining asteroids, mining certain areas, and apparently the resource value of these are just in the trillions and trillions of dollars. So maybe there's something in the future that just throws everything out of whack. I don't know.
You never know. I'm pretty much of a space buff, outer space and science, astronomy. And you're right. There is a lot of mining out there, the asteroid belt, Mars, even the moon. Right now it's a little cost prohibitive, but since government's gotten out of it and since government's gotten out of it and we're relying more on private companies like SpaceX, the cost of this stuff is going to go down, and if other countries get involved in it, like Russia and China, they're not going to want to be left behind. They'll invest in it too. It's a matter of time until we start mining space. I would have loved to have seen it time, at least get a man on Mars. I don't think it's going to happen before I keel over, but eventually we're going to have to expand. I mean, the world can only hold so many billion people, too.
Roger Sanchez says Greg Baldwin's face should be on the space bucks.
That sounds good to me.
Actually, I kind of stole that from a South Park episode. So there's this South Park episode where an alien lands on Earth and they're just playing with the Earthlings. They're pretending they pretend that this alien's a robber or whatever, and he's got all these space bucks, right? And so the Earthlings or the people in South Park, they kill the alien. And so then there was these space cops that come down searching for these space bucks and this alien. And they're just like, oh, no, we haven't seen him. But really what they did was they distributed all this hypothetical money across the globe to all these governments. And the governments are just spending trillions and trillions of dollars and doing all this stuff on this made-up currency, the space bucks. Yeah, but it was, kind of the point about currency in general. It's really just the value we put in it that makes it valuable.
Yeah, it is. I often said if there was an economic collapse, money would have no value. The only thing worth value would be seeds, water, guns, and ammo.
What would happen if you were mentioning mining asteroids or something earlier? Some of these asteroids are have a bunch of gold on them. Will that drop the price of gold to the price of silver or something?
Well, actually, it could. Like anything else, it'd fall under supply and demand. You get all of a sudden we just discover an asteroid that has twice the amount of gold that the Earth has.
Yeah.
Gold prices would plummet. Of course, you got to get to it first.
We use gold. Gold has a bunch applications that, if it was cheap enough, we probably could utilize it a little bit more.
Oh yeah. They use it in space satellites and stuff because I don't know, it handles the sun's radiation better than other.
Well, even like old computers, like certain old computers, if you tear those apart, there's a small amount.
And there's a smidgen of gold and silver
Yeah.
in there, and platinum. I hope we don't discover a huge supply of gold yet, because I'm invested a little bit in gold and silver. I don't want it to plummet.
I read that there's actually some people trying to like get a permit to dig through landfills to like find their old hard drives that they threw away back when they had like thousands of Bitcoin on them.
Yeah.
And Bitcoin's worth like $30,000 a coin right now. So if you had 1,000 Bitcoin on this hard drive in a landfill somewhere, that's like $300 million.
Yeah, I saw a story online about that. I think it was a guy in Wisconsin, if I remember right.
So I don't know, if you find some computer equipment in a landfill, don't tear it up for the gold right away. Just make sure there's no Bitcoin on there. From like 2009 or whatever.
I got old electronic components, motherboards and stuff sitting out in my garage for recycling. Maybe I should examine them before I recycle them.
Yeah,
might be something on there worth of value.
Yeah.
Well, shoot, boys.
Yeah.
Are we wrapping her up or?
Yeah, we can wrap this up. I'm pretty well talked out for this time around.
Well, yeah. You want to pitch?
Pitch my businesses?
Yeah, Camp Ridger real quick.
Sure. I'll pitch them.
I'm gonna just promote the Sweet Sarah seasoning from Camp Ridger.
Okay, you got.
I
the
look
Sweet
great
Sarah
for like all the chicken, every chicken, anything with chicken. I put this on it.
Awesome. We might have discussed it at the beginning of the show. I do flooring for a living, but as I get the retirement, I'm getting out of that and getting into bookkeeping and my own spice business. And the spice business you can find on Facebook.com/Camp Ridger. Hold it up again so they can see how it's spelled.
Oh, yeah.
And I've got 3 spices out right now. One's for red meats, one's for white meats, and one's for seafood. However, my feedback is, hey, there we go.
Yeah.
And you can just scroll down.
CampRidger.net if you want to check out the website.
CampRidger.net, correct. And
steak
got 3 seasonings out right now.
You can tell it's good because it's almost gone.
It's empty. That's what I like to see. I'm in the process of making a 4th spice, which will be a chili spice. It's going to be hot. I taste tested it the other day, and I put it in some beans, and it was really hot, but I'm not sure if it was the spice or the few jalapenos that I added. But I'm coming up with that. I hope to have the final mixture of that, the final blend ready in a couple more weeks. Then it's just a matter of mixing it, bottling it, throwing some labels on it, and hopefully by sometime in March that'll be ready. They normally go for $7.98 a container, but if you can see on your screen, they're now $5.25, 20 stock. And they're good for about 2 years until you need to dump them for freshness.
Yeah, I need to order some steak seasoning. That steak seasoning is really good. It's good on everything. I mean, even on some potatoes.
That seems to be the biggest seller, out of them all. And because, a lot of people like to grill and, steak seasoning just goes with everything. But I think you put it on chicken too, don't you, Greg?
Yeah, that goes good on everything. And then,
that goes good on everything, I think.
Even the other 2 I've done like ribs and stuff with too.
Right. It all depends on your personal taste. Like I said, I designed them for red meat, white meat, seafood, but people are pretty much putting them on everything. At least that's the feedback I'm getting. And the chili spice, once I come out with that, again, it won't go in just chili. I think just about anything that you'd normally like to have a little bit of a kick to, enchiladas, tacos, pretty much anything Mexican, I think that would go good with. I'm actually debating on whether I want to, go from naming it Cautious Carmen to Cuidado Carmen and doing the labels all in Spanish.
There you go. That might do good.
That might be a nice little marketing gimmick to get it to be sold. I'm not sure. I'll have to check with U.S. labeling,
I like the
laws
name.
and regulations on that to see if I'd have to do bilingual or if I can just do it in Spanish. So it's on the market. It's about to be there. And when I do, I can come up with the word vendor shows. Just about everyone that tries one of them buys one of them. And that's always a good sign. People are trying them and walking away. That wouldn't be a good sign. But like I said, just about everyone that tries one ends up buying one. So.
Yeah, I was joking around earlier.
If you're listening, give them a shot. I mean, they're great. You can buy them on the website. All you got to do is click on the products page and you can get more information on each one. There's a card in there. I can ship it anywhere in the U.S. So we're good to go.
Yeah, I was joking around earlier in the show about sodium, but yeah, I like them too because there's no added salt to them.
Yes. Thank you for mentioning that. I forgot. Usually I tell people that.
That's a big seller nowadays is, a lot of seasonings that you buy they have a lot of salt in them. And so you can't overdo the seasoning because then it's just too damn salty.
Right.
Whereas yours doesn't have salt, so you can taste the seasoning.
Yeah.
Well, being an older person, like I said, I'm 62, so I know a lot of older people, 60s, 70s, 80s, they have to restrict their salt intake, so I thought it'd be nice to come out with a product that didn't have salt because just about all the seasonings out there have salt in them. Yeah. And I figured you can always add salt later, if you like to have salt on it, you can use a couple teaspoons of this, tablespoons, however much you like your spices, rub down a brisket with it or whatever. And if you want to add, a couple teaspoons of salt with it, great. I mean, I usually add a little bit of salt to mine.
Yeah, I like the sweet Sarah stuff. It's definitely got that just slightly sweet for the chicken. And I think it amplifies the flavor a lot.
A lot of people are giving me feedback that they like the smoky flavoring in it from the smoky paprika.
Yeah.
It has smoked paprika in that. And I've had a couple people ask me, taste test. It's like, how do you get the smokiness in here? Read the ingredients. Smoked paprika. That's how I get it in there. Smoke.
Uh-oh, we lost Daryl again. Well, check out his seasonings. Again, campbridger.net.
Oh, there he is. I lost you for a second, Daryl.
Okay, I'm back. So give them a shot. And I'll also do some bookkeeping on the side. If you're in the Clear Lake area, which is District 4, the northeast corner of Pennsylvania, you need some work done, give me a holler. You can also find me on Facebook there, facebook.com/DL Bookkeeping.
And just remember, every dollar you give him boosts his income, which in turn boosts his income tax level, which will pay off the national debt one seasoning at a time.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. That's how we solve the debt crisis. Just 2 years worth of your income on my spices.
About $3 billion worth of spices.
Yeah, sooner or later it'll find its way to the debt payment. You guys are crazy. That's what makes you so great.
Just a reminder for anybody from South Dakota still watching. We got our convention's going to be in Sioux Falls on March 20th. I think at 2:00 Central Standard Time. Make sure to be there. And if you like the content today, make sure to subscribe on YouTube, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at Hedgehog Watchdog. And we'll see you next Sunday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time.
No, next Sunday is Super Bowl. We're doing 4 p.m.
Oh, that's right.
Forgot about that.
Thanks, Greg. Next Sunday we'll be on at 4 p.m. and we'll do a couple hours before the Super Bowl. We'll do like a pregame special for everybody, which should be pretty cool.
All right, I'll have to tune in that one.
All right, thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you next Sunday.
All right, hey, thanks again.
Thanks for coming.